and welcome to Girls with Goals. I'm Niamh Maher and I am absolutely delighted to welcome my guest this week. Jayda McCann joins me. Jayda, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm so delighted to meet you in person. I've been following you on Instagram for a while and you've been really open and really honest about your health journey and I want to talk about it with you, but we're going to start the same way we start every podcast. So it's playing our game and it's called 6 Words or Less, and basically you have to describe yourself in 6 words or less, and it's for any of our listeners or our readers of Her.ie or viewers who may not know who you are. And firstly I have to apologise because I have given you absolutely no notice. Usually I tell people and I forgot.
That's okay.
So can you think of 6 words to describe yourself? And if not, don't worry about it because I'm a terrible presenter for not telling you.
Honest, bubbly, outgoing, positive, like freakishly positive.
Yeah.
Like way too positive, I would say. I'm struggling now.
That's 4, and the game is 6 words or less, so that was incredibly well done for absolutely no notice. Yeah, and I love the words. So for the last year, it's been over a year, hasn't it?
It's just coming up on a year now,
Coming up on a year that you have been battling an incredibly rare form of cancer. So can you tell us first, how did you come to find out about the illness in the first place?
So, like, I suppose cancer has always been in my family. My dad had cancer when he was not much older than me when I was just born. So I've always been quite conscious of like checking myself and stuff. But I have a coil and I was checking my wire.
Yeah.
And as I was coming back out, I noticed that one like side of, I call it my mini, was just like really like hard. And it felt like there was like something in there. So I immediately went to my GP who gave me antibiotics, and then they didn't work. They told me it was a Bartholine cyst.
Right.
I repeatedly went back and forth to the maternity hospital who told me the same thing, gave me like constant antibiotics and increased the dose and painkillers until eventually, because I was so persistent, that's another word for me. Persistent. They agreed then to like surgically remove the cyst. But when they went in, they realised that it wasn't a cyst and that in fact it was a rare type of sarcoma cancer. Initially we thought it was Niamh Maher sarcoma, which is again rare. There's over 58 different types of sarcoma and each of them are individually difficult to treat. But then later on we found out when we got a second opinion that it was actually a thing called P-coma.
So initially, well, first off, it seems like persistence is the key word here. Like you felt like there was something wrong and you like obviously knew that it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Like how many times did you go back until 8 times before they finally
Surgically removed it.
Wow. I mean, were you like, pissed off?
Yeah, I was angry. I was angry because nobody was listening to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially because when they did examinations, they wouldn't thoroughly look. They'd just be like, oh yeah, and then like just kind of, it was so flippant.
Yeah.
And I think especially because in this maternity hospital, it's predominantly like student nurses. And a lot of the time the nurses that were students, like they didn't know what to do, like they didn't have the experience. And I was angry that they were put in that position, but I was angry that, again, I was put in that position where I wasn't actually being seen by the doctor.
Yeah.
It wasn't until maybe the last time I went that the doctor saw me. And again, she diagnosed me with a Bartholine cyst, which wasn't correct.
And wow. And then like when you finally did get the diagnosis of a sarcoma, you know, you obviously and your family as well kind of quickly realized that it was incredibly rare. And isn't it the case that there isn't any kind of specialist sarcoma expert here in Ireland?
Yeah.
So you obviously went abroad looking.
Yeah, well, there was a sarcoma specialist here up until about 3 years ago.
Okay.
Her name was Alexia Bertuzzi, but the HSE couldn't afford to keep her on because there wasn't enough patients. So they let her go when her contract went. She went back to Italy. So when we found out that I wasn't under a sarcoma specialist, of course we were livid because we weren't actually told this.
Yeah.
For the first maybe 3 months of me finding out I had sarcoma, we thought that we were under sarcoma specialists. Nobody mentioned that they weren't specialists. So when we found out that they weren't, obviously my mum is English, so I'm really lucky in that I applied for dual citizenship, and I was entitled to go to England to seek second opinions and care. So we went to Harley Street where there were sarcoma specialists.
Yeah. And so, like, we're kind of talking about the nitty gritty of it and talking about, like, trying to find the specialist and finding the care. But, Like, how did you feel, Jade, when you got the kind of finally after going back and going back? How did you feel when you were initially told?
I was quite like, it's so weird because I was like, ha, you know, I told you.
Oh, really?
Initially, I was really, because I knew the whole time that something was really wrong, and I kept telling them that cancer ran in my family and that I was really at high risk and stuff, and I wasn't listened to. So eventually, when it did come out, I was really like, you know what I mean? Like, I told you so.
Yeah.
But I suppose afterwards, I was in complete shock. Like, I left the building and I felt like I was in a movie. Like, there was, you know, when there's like panning, like I can't hear anybody and, you know, that kind of thing. And I think immediately when you hear cancer, you just think, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you think. And at this point, that wasn't the case for me. It hadn't metastasized yet, well, as far as we knew. And, you know, I was just frightened. I was frightened about what they were going to do, what I was going to go through, how I was going to feel, how I was going to tell people.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, did you think about how you were going to tell your family members and your friends, and how did you kind of go about that? Because I do want to get to like your Instagram and how, like, obviously you said you were honest and that element of it in a moment. But first, after the initial kind of diagnosis, how did you broach the subject with your extended family and friends?
So what happened was, like, I'm really lucky that my family are all quite close. So as soon as I left the building, my dad knew that I had the appointment and he called straight away. And I always kind of regret how I told him, because I think I could have been more thoughtful. But I was just in such shock.
Did you just like blurt
on
it
the
out?
phone? Yeah, I just said, Daddy, it's cancer. And I think that was so hard for him to hear. And I think, like, even sometimes I hear myself say it and I'm like, why would I say it like that, you know? But it was kind of just, like, it just kind of came out, you know?
I think you just obviously wanted him to know so that he could maybe...
Well, he'd only been diagnosed 3 weeks before me. So I knew he was going to understand.
Yeah.
And I think I just wanted him to know, because I wanted to know how to deal with it. You know, I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What did you do? So I think I wanted to tell him straight away. So he was the first person. And then we just drove immediately to my job. We handed in the cert. I finished work. We drove immediately to my college. I told them that I couldn't continue. And then we drove... Well, I said to my mum, while I'm in shock, I want to get it out of the way, because once this hits me, I'm going to be upset and I'm not going to be able to tell anybody.
So you went and like did like
Straight away,
life
yeah.
things.
I went straight to my job within an hour of being told, straight to my job, straight to my college, and then I went to my nan's house. So luckily enough, my nan, like, everyone gathers in my nan's house. Like, all my family are always there. So when I went there, like, my auntie and my cousins were there, so I was able to sit down and tell everybody at the same time.
Yeah, I would imagine that was just...
It was heartbreaking. Like, I'm really close to my nan, and especially because they'd heard the news of my dad 3 weeks previous, like, you know, they all just bawled. Like, we all just cried together, you know, and I think that's nice. You know, it's nice to be able to do that. Like, so I was kind of just comfortable that I got it out, and that everybody knew. So anybody who wasn't there, I asked my nan, I just said, Nan, I'm going to go home, and if you wouldn't mind, could you tell anybody who wasn't here? And she made the calls then.
And you mentioned there your job, and like, you were working in the media, right? Like, that was kind of what you were planning on doing, and you were also planning on going abroad and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so all of that just stopped.
Yeah, well, I was due to go to New York maybe a month and a half later to live. And I was working in a media company here at the time, a television company. And, like, they knew I was going, they had my notice, everything was just in plan, in place. So I had to obviously just... At the time, I was like, it's just on hold, do you know? But, you know, all along, I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be an easy journey. It wasn't going to be simple.
And so this was at, you know, the very beginning. So what were the next steps then? So what happened after that initial day when you, for some reason, went around and did all these efficient things, which sounds so boss, by the way. And then obviously you sat and let the news kind of wash over you and your family. So what were the next steps? Was it second opinion time?
No, not then.
Okay.
So I actually went through 5 weeks of radiotherapy here.
Okay.
And I kind of listened to everybody here for a while. And then after my radiotherapy, I found out that they weren't sarcoma specialists. Basically, the plan was at the time to do 5 weeks of radiotherapy, shrink the tumour, and then surgically remove it, which would have left me with a permanent colostomy and catheter bag. So they would have had to remove a lot down there as well. That was the plan. But when I got the scan out of my radio to see where everything was at, we found out that it had metastasized to my lungs. So basically what they told me here in Ireland was chemotherapy, like, that's it. They were just like, that was basically what they said. They basically were like, we can give you chemo to extend your life, but like, you know, you've got, I think they gave me 9 months to 12 months to live. Oh my God. And that was with the Niamh, which was what we thought it was at the time. So for me, I was like, that's not good enough.
Well, you're so young, Jade, as well. Like, and obviously, like, everyone says the word cancer, and it's terrifying. But I can't imagine what that must have felt like to be like a 23-year-old and to have the doctor say, we're going to give you chemotherapy to extend your life, and then that's the best we can do. Because, like, clearly, I've known you for a few minutes, and I can tell that you're a fighter. So, like, you were just like, no, this isn't good enough.
I just I mean, even my mum and dad, I'm so blessed to have the parents that I have. But we walked out of that appointment, and I then had been transferred to a chemotherapy specialist who we had a good few meetings with, and I didn't trust him and I didn't like him. And at the end of every meeting, he just kept telling me that the prognosis was still the same. He didn't have faith in me. He didn't want to push me to do any alternative treatments or trial treatments. I remember actually at one point he said, if you bring things to the table, we'll consider it. But he wasn't willing to do the extensive research to save my life. So I knew I needed a new doctor. And I think at that point, that's when we began to look abroad at maybe the different options that we could receive in different countries. Maybe surgical options, other chemotherapy options, anything at all.
And so you went then, you basically said, see you later.
Yeah, I basically told that doctor, I was like, we're looking abroad, and he got really offended. Like, he was like, well, they're not going to tell you anything different. But funnily enough, when we looked abroad...
That makes me really angry.
It makes me really angry.
It's your life, like.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it just makes me wonder how many... Because sarcoma is predominantly, unfortunately, a childhood cancer and a young adult cancer. And it makes me wonder how many children and young adults have been in the same situation here in Ireland that haven't received the care that they deserve. And that makes me angry.
Absolutely.
That makes me angry. But when we went to London, the specialist over there had my files from here. And she was like, look, based on what I have here, I can't offer you anything else. She said, other than one chemotherapy that's available here, not in Ireland, which would give you 24 months, so an extra year. But you'd need to move to London and you'd need to stay here. And if that worked and stabilised you, you'd need to stay here again to receive the drugs. So I have a family in London, and that was an option. But, like, I mean, 2 years of my life alone isn't worth it. I'd rather the 12 months with my family, you know? So that was kind of the way we looked at it. Now, she did say, and she did flag in this meeting, that she was like, it's really unlikely that you'd have this cancer because it's predominantly maybe for women in their 60s, especially the fact that it was in the vulva and then the lungs. So she was like, look, I'm going to do more tests and we'll get back to you. So when they came back, it was like, it's actually P-coma and there are more treatment options available.
So it wasn't what they were telling you in Ireland?
No, and when I came back and switched doctors here in Ireland, I changed specialists as well, to one with more experience, one with more oomph, one that I really like and that really fights for me and that, you know, wishes me luck on my scans and believes in me and tries to stabilise it. Like, he kind of, what were we saying? I forget what we said.
What's the P-coma then?
Oh yeah, sorry. So basically when we got under him, we actually went to a conference. The day I found out it was P-coma, sorry, I got that phone call, and we were going to a sarcoma conference that night. And I was so upset, and I was like, I don't want to go. And my mum and dad were like, you're going. So I went, and at that conference there was an American doctor, and there was the doctor now that I'm under. And it was why I wanted to change to him, because he was doing all this active work in sarcoma research. So I was like, he's my guy here in Ireland. So this doctor was talking about all these different types of sarcoma, and he had so much knowledge, and I was frightened to put up my hand to ask about P-coma. I was like, what if it's worse? Do you know what I mean? So I raised my hand and I was like, look, I thought I had Niamh Maher, but now I've got P-coma. And he was so excited. He was like, oh my God, there's so many new drugs coming up for this particular type of cancer. He was like, now a lot of them are in America, but we can get them here if you need to. And the doctor that was sitting there come to me and said, who are you under? And, you know, whatever. And he said, we're going to get that drug. And within maybe a week of me finding out that it was actually P-coma, I was then on this oral drug called sirolimus, which I'm on now.
Wow. So, like, I mean, a big change then, a big turnaround from the kind of initial prognosis that you were getting.
Yeah.
And so how, I mean, like, it seems kind of like a silly question, but in terms of how you're feeling now and your, you know, positivity levels and stuff about the drugs that you're on and your future, how are you feeling?
Well, I realised that I had to take a lot of stuff into my own hands. So, you know, if you want to succeed in something, obviously you've got to give it your all. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really had to sit down and reevaluate how I thought about myself and how much I valued myself. And I know that sounds really silly, but I had to learn to put myself first and to really start to say no to people,
Yeah.
focus on my diet, exercise more, sleep when I needed to. And like I had to learn to love myself, and I'm still doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an ongoing process, but that's one of the things that I do it daily that really keeps me motivated and positive. I read a lot of books around recovery and you know, like what are they called, rapid remissions and things like that. I do a lot of research, but I think recently I had scans there about a month ago now, and they showed that there is some activity. So my pelvic tumour is growing, unfortunately. I start radiotherapy for that next week to try and get it under control again. But some of my lung nodules have disappeared.
Okay.
Now 2 of them have grown.
Okay.
Now the doctor thinks that because there was time between my scan and when I started the drug, obviously because of all the research and everything like that, that maybe it grew and then the drug might have stunted it or brought it back. So I'm feeling positive because generally in sarcoma, the nodules don't disappear. You know, like that's really kind of unheard of. And I'm just feeling like really kind of blessed that that's happening, and I'm just really happy that there is some activity.
Yeah.
So the options now are that if the activity continues in my lungs and we can get that under control, that we could maybe do radiotherapy on the remaining 2 that have grown. And with my pelvic tumour, if we can just shrink that and keep it under control, it's in my vulva, it's not going to do any harm. So my goal is to live with cancer and to get it under such control that I can live my life normally and pain-free and just, you know, live normally. There's so many people think that cancer is life or death, but the amount of people that live with cancer, it's just a chronic illness today. Like by 2020, 1 in every 2 people are going to have it. And I think you got to think about it differently. You got to shift how you view it. And once you do that, you can learn to live with it.
I think it's as well, Jade, I think like you weren't in a position in your life that you were like, okay, cool, yeah, I'll accept what's being said to me. But like you said earlier, you know, it scares me that maybe people have been told something and then they just accept it, you know? I mean, that's a terrifying thing to think about. And the fact that it happened to you, like such a young woman who also as well has this incredible platform now whereby you're talking about it, and you're sharing it with so many people. Like, there's lots of people who don't have that. And does that concern you?
It really concerns me. It really, really does concern me. And I think about it so much. And I think that's why I share my story so much. Like, for example, I just want to kind of encourage people to request more and fight for more. So, for example, recently my cousin, her baby, we found out that the baby had a cyst on her brain. And my cousin's a young mum, she's only 20. And the first thing that she said in the appointment I was there was, I want a second opinion. And for me to have inspired her, taught her that, you know, the first answer is never good enough when it comes to your health. Always seek a second opinion. Like, she's only 20, you know, and I was just like blown away. And I mean, for me to, like, it does concern me, but I take comfort in the fact that I am sharing my story in hopes that it encourages other people to fight for what they deserve. I mean, the HSE definitely needs a lot of improvement. Like, I think everybody can agree on that, including the HSE. But for me to be able to raise awareness around that and maybe show people that, you know, you're not stuck here. There's a big world out there. And, you know, you don't have to accept what the first doctor tells you. You know, and I think it concerns me. Like, like I keep saying that, and it really just frightened me. I think about it all the time, particularly with babies and kids and parents that don't have the knowledge or the strength at that time to fight for more. That frightens me.
On your like social media platforms, you have over 40,000 followers on Instagram.
Yes.
So like, I mean, you were working in the media before you were diagnosed, but when did that kind of start to pick up pace? And how were you feeling on the one hand going through this one thing, which like can absolutely and rightly so just crush a family, and really like the scariest thing that I think a family can go through. And it wasn't just you, it was your father as well. So like, but then on this other side of it, you know, this crazy social media, you know, following was growing as well. So how did you kind of deal with that? But when did it start, firstly?
So when I first got diagnosed, I was on 12k followers. and I was running the blog.
That's still fairly good.
It was
Way
good.
more than me.
It was good. But I obviously wanted to strive for more.
Yeah.
At the time I was talking about, I'm a makeup artist as well in my spare time, in my past life. So I was talking about makeup, beauty, but I was also raising a lot of awareness around mental health.
Yeah.
I suffered with my mental health right up until I got diagnosed. Particularly with, like addiction issues and depression, anxiety. So I spoke a lot about that. I talked a lot about, particularly in young people and tried to teach them alternatives to things. And that was really good and I loved that. So when I first got diagnosed, I had this following that were really engaging and I didn't want to, I remember sitting down with Dad and going, Dad, what am I going to do? Because my followers are wondering where I am and I haven't been online. And my dad was like, Jay, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell your truth. And that for me, like, really, really rang a bell and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to tell the truth about this, And that was more to do with Dad's story too, because we decided we were going to speak about his story first. And then when I got diagnosed, we were like, people are going to think I'm taking the piss, do you know what I mean? But I went on and I was honest, and the more honest I was and the more I showed raw emotions like crying and anger, the more it grew. But I think in London, when I left that appointment where she told me that I didn't have any more than 24 months, and that was with moving to London, I sat in Marylebone Station and I was roaring crying. Yeah. I don't know whether you remember that. And I was crying on camera.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
And I was speaking about how my mum was in the cafe and I was sitting outside because we couldn't sit together without crying. Yeah. And I just rang home to tell them the news and stuff. And after that, my followers shot up. Like, I don't know whether you remember Bloggers Unveiled. They shared it. A lot of the bigger bloggers like Rosie Connolly, Grace, Faced by Grace, everybody got on board and really helped me campaign for my GoFundMe and stuff. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, I'm so grateful. But it shot up, and I think I was stuck on about 36k for a while, which is still brilliant. My engagement was brilliant, still is amazing. I contact my followers daily. I love engaging with them and hearing their stories. And then recently I went on and I was crying. I can't remember why I was crying about something anyway. And again, it shut up. And I think people love the rawness of it. Yeah. And they love when I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it, Jade. Like, sometimes you come on and you look, like, so glamorous. And I saw you did a makeup tutorial from your hospital room there, like, a while ago. And I just loved it. I love makeup tutorials anyway. Like, I find it so fascinating because I can't do makeup that well. So I love watching people who know what they're doing. And then, like, and you were so positive and you were just chatting away and da-da-da. And then, like, the next day, you were on and you were really upset and you were talking about, like your mental health. And I was watching you and it's really heartbreaking to watch, but obviously, you're touching a lot of people's lives. And it's like, it's weird because I don't know, like when I watch it, I feel really upset because I just can't imagine what you're going through. But then I'm not just like dipping in and watching you, like I watch you on your really strong, positive days as well. And so it kind of, like, it really is an insight into your life. And does that kind of put pressure on you, though, that you feel like maybe you don't need necessarily when you're going through something like this as well?
It's not that I don't need it. In a lot of ways, it has been my lifeline. Yeah. Because it keeps me sane, it keeps me busy, keeps me motivated. The positive messages and the stories that get shared keep me, like in this world and reminded of, sometimes how lucky I am with some of the stories I hear. Yeah. But it can be a bit of pressure.
And
I'm not going to lie.
Overwhelming, I would imagine.
It can be, yeah. Like sometimes when, like especially lately, I was struggling a lot with my mental health, and I was recently put on antidepressants, which I spoke about openly on my page, and I still speak about openly. I think if you need them, you need them. But like a lot, like when I got assessed for that, one of the main factors that was kind of concerning for my counsellor was that I am constantly being noticed and watched. And on bad days in particular, I kind of feel embarrassed about maybe how I look. And people, sometimes I think what pressures me the most and what makes me feel a bit out of sorts the most is when people stare or whatever, but don't say hi, because I'm quite approachable and I'm like, just come over, like when people congregate in groups and kind of whisper and stare, that kind of gets to me a little bit. But for the most part, no, like it really motivates me, and on a daily basis, it really keeps me kind of in check. I have to go on and check in on my feelings. I have to go on and let everybody know what I'm doing. No, I don't have to. Sorry, I worded that wrong. No. But in my mind, I think, like, in order to keep myself sane, I have to do that. Yeah. It's one of my daily rituals that I do. But it can be pressure sometimes, especially when for example, with the GoFundMe, I get a lot of kind of hate and negativity.
I was going to ask, has there been much backlash? Because you've talked about it a little bit with the GoFundMe, and I mean, you worded it in quite a hilarious way, to be honest with you. Like, I thought it was pretty gas the way you were like, do you think I'm off on holidays? Like, what do you think? And are people saying to you that, like, you don't look sick enough and all this kind of stuff? Like, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. So
I was out recently having a drink in a nightclub beside my hometown, and a woman actually came up and she was like, oh my God, hi, I follow your blog. And I was like, oh my God, how are you? Like, do you want to get a picture? What's the story? Like, talking away. And she was like, but you don't look sick. And I was like, well, like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, you know, she was like, should you be drinking? Like, is this the money from your GoFundMe that you're using to come out tonight?
oh my God, she did not say
She
that
did,
to
yeah,
you,
to my
did.
face. And I do get a lot of people that say things like that to me, yeah. And the messages that I get as well, like some people actually accuse me of fabricating this whole story for the money.
That's ridiculous, though. Like, you're in hospital, like.
I know.
So they think that you're making it up.
Yeah, I have been accused of that, yeah.
That is crazy. And what do you respond to that, or do you just go whatever?
I used to, and it used to really upset me, and I used to cry, and I used to get heartbroken because I wish it wasn't real.
Yeah.
I wish, like, nothing more in the world. I wish that it was fake.
Are these people hiding behind like
fake accounts?
Right, so
yeah, a lot of the time.
they're trolls essentially.
Yes, yeah.
So they're not real people who are engaging with you.
Some people do. Some people, there's 1 or 2 followers that I know their names regularly and they pop up. So for example, when I did my Reiki, I got my Reiki master a few weeks ago, and a girl wrote to me, and I was in the pub and I was having a drink while watching the football. And a girl wrote to me, and I talked to her regularly, like I'd give her time. She was like, oh, I didn't think you should be drinking when you're doing your Reiki. And like, for example, like different things, like when there's a fundraiser happening in April in the Grand Social for my fund, because once this scan is over, if this drug is exhausted, we need to go somewhere to find something that's going to work.
Absolutely.
And we do need to build up the funds because abroad it's really expensive. And when I shared about this event, this girl wrote to me and she was like, what exactly are you spending this money on? Like, what's it going on? And I think one thing that I need to make clear is at the moment, this money is being spent on nothing. It's being archived and saved for when we need it.
Yeah.
And if we don't need it, and if I die before then, we're going to put it into charities that have either helped me or that are going to help somebody else in my situation. And I've made that really, really clear. But people don't seem to actually listen to that. And then they pick up on different things and tend to write in. Yeah. But sometimes they're people I recognise and sometimes they're people I don't.
Does that upset your family? Because like it upsets me, and I just can't imagine like how your dad or your mom or your gran or your family feel when people are accusing you of such like heinous things, essentially. How do they cope with that kind of aspect of it? Because aside from anything, they're dealing with, you know, a daughter who's sick.
I think the person that it affects the most is my dad. And I think that's because he also comes on the blog with me. And
I've seen him, yeah. He's brilliant.
he shares a lot of his story too. And we're both very invested in it, and we both reply to followers, and we both get recognised and share our experience in person too. So I think Dad, for example, went on one time and he was like, the next person to write in, he was like, I'm going to find who you are. He was like, and I'm not going to write back to you. He said, I'm going to come to your job or your house or wherever you hang out. He said, I'm going to embarrass you. He said, I'm going to tell everybody what you do in your spare time. And it kind of died down a bit then after that. Like Dad gets really upset because I think he can see how much I love the work that I do. And how much I really invest in the blog and in my Instagram and the time and effort I put into it. So when it's thrown back in my face, I think he can see how hurt I am. And he feels everything with me, I think, because we shared the journey, you know.
And your dad got good news though recently, didn't he?
So he is in remission at the moment. So he's cancer free. You know, he did his chemo. He was stage 4 as well. So again, it's a really hopeful story. It's very inspiring for other people to hear.
I think so too. So I want to talk as well about the fact that you were, just last week in recording an album as well. Like, I mean, can we just talk about the things that you're doing aside from, you know, obviously like living with this every day? You have a documentary that's coming out as well. So you have cameras and stuff following you around. What's that like?
Scary.
Yeah.
But the team that I work with, I'm also producing it, so they're close friends and they're almost like family at this stage. And I think that was the key to get in the documentary as personal and as good as it is now.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of the work that we've all done. But it is intimidating having cameras follow you. And there were days that I was really sick, really ill on camera. And I think it's important to show those days.
Yeah.
It's very hard to show them on Instagram because it's only like shoulder up, you know.
But I remember there was this one day when you must have been filming something that was really emotional and that was really, really hard on you, and you came on and, you know, you said, you were like, you know, the amount of followers that you have on Instagram will never equate to the happiness that you have in your life, like. And I think it was a nice thing because, like, you come on and you tell us when you're having like bad days when it comes to your health, but this was actually about the fact that, like, you just were not feeling happy, you were going through this awful thing, you were also shooting something, and it just seemed like it was a lot.
That was the day that we had our first screening of the documentary, the part 1, so with the 2-part series. We had just watched the first full part, and I had not yet seen the interviews of my mum and dad. So obviously my mum and dad were upset on camera. They were talking a lot about what would happen if I passed and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was so hard to watch, and especially because my dad was sitting beside me.
Yeah.
I was trying to hold my shit together. I was like, oh my God, don't cry. But it was really upsetting, and I think when I got home I was really overwhelmed, and I was thinking, I always wanted this. I wanted so bad to work in media and be successful in media and have attention and, you know, a platform that I could share, because I really believe that I do have a lot to share, and even before I got sick. So I think it's be careful what you wish for, and that was the moment that I had where I was like, oh my God, like when I first got sick I was so in love with myself, like in a really positive way. I'd worked so hard on my mental health. I was at a stage where I was comfortable to move abroad alone. I was living out on my own. I was working my butt off. I was making money. I was independent, and I was so happy. And I didn't have that many followers, well, in comparison to what I have now. So I think now that I've got everything I wished for, I've also got this, you know, underlying illness that has depleted my mental health. It's brought me right back to where I was years ago mentally. Physically, I have challenges daily. So I think, you know, it's be careful what you wish for. And I think I wanted to really drive home that, like, yes, I do have all this external success, but that does not equate to how I feel. And I wanted people to realise that, because I think nowadays people think, oh yeah, like for example, Rosie Connolly, oh God, she looks so glamorous. Like, look at her car, look at her family. Like, she just had a baby. Everybody's probably thinking, oh, she's amazing. People don't know how, you know, how really her life is and what happens behind closed doors. And that's the same with me or anybody else that's on social media, like Ellie Kelly or anybody. People can make assumptions. They can comment on it. They can talk about it if they want, gossip about it, but they have absolutely no idea what goes on in our lives, really. Because again, we choose to share what we share. Social media, like for everybody, and even people that don't have followers, put their best face forward. They might filter their pictures, they might put up a status that they want to share that makes them look good, whatever the case is. And I think people need to realise that we do that too. And that underneath it all, we have a family life that we don't share about. You know, there's a lot of stuff in my life that I don't share about.
I mean, I don't know, you don't have to share now, don't talk about him if you don't want to, but like you talk about your boyfriend on your vlog as well, and you only started seeing him kind of around the time when this all happened, so I mean, what was that like? Were you just like the same way on that day when you were kind of going to your job and going to everything, sorting it out? Were you going to just sort that out as well and be like, look, this is happening, so...
I did that, That's exactly what I did. He was in Australia at the time visiting his family. We were only dating for 3 weeks. We'd only been on a few dates. We were quite inseparable. We really liked each other. We knew it was kind of going somewhere. And that day, again, we went to my nan's, all my family were there, and we dropped my auntie home. And as we dropped my auntie home, my phone rang. So I stepped out of the car and it was Bren, and he didn't know that I had the appointment. He didn't know he knew I had the surgery to remove the cyst. But before that, I didn't tell him anything about my health down there because I was only just dating him. I didn't think he needed to know.
Fair,
So when I went in for that appointment, he knew about the surgery, and I just said, look, come here, some results have come back from that surgery that I got. And he was like, oh, I didn't realise there was going to be results. And I was like, neither did I. I was like, look, come here. I was like, it's been a great few weeks, but when you get back from Australia, I want to discontinue whatever we've got going on because it's actually cancer, and I want to do this my own way, and I don't want to burden you. You're really handsome, you're young, go and live whatever you want to do. but you do not need to be sitting beside me through this, especially because we've only just started seeing each other. So he kind of went quiet for a few days, and then he came back and he was like, no, I want to be there for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had a similar conversation when it metastasized to my lungs in July. And again, no, I want to be there for you. There were times when, you know, I was in hospital and my life was being threatened, and no, I want to be there for you. And he's just been constant. He's been a pillar through all of this.
Yeah.
And I see him every day, and he treats me amazing. We get on amazing. We're equal. And I'm so grateful for him. Like, you know, we're together a year now.
You're together a year. Amazing. You said earlier that, you know, you're someone who is living with cancer, and like your story, Jade, has so many different like avenues to it, and like such lows as well as really encouraging and positive aspects of it as well. From now and kind of moving forward, is that where you're at? As in, are you going to continue to live your life as somebody who is battling this, but who is not going to be defeated by it? And I mean, the fact that you're even telling people that we need to change, like we can't all be sitting around being terrified of cancer, because that will give it
power.
It will give it power, and it will make it win, essentially.
Yes.
So I mean, like I that's what I take from your story anyway, and I hope that like other people kind of take that too. And is that something that like you are going to look at now moving forward into the future?
My plan, I'm reading a book at the moment called Radical Remissions, and it's about a lady who was a counsellor for oncology patients, and she found that some of her patients, based on their mental state, bet terminal cancer, and some of them didn't, based on their mental state. So she was really kind of intrigued, and she travelled the world and did a big PhD on what were the common denominators between people that bet cancer against all odds. And I'm reading that at the moment, and I'm following it. It's my Bible. And my goal is to stabilise my cancer and to live my life. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I want to travel. I want to do all that stuff. And I think it's up here. It's up here. And I'm determined, and I'll try anything. Like at the moment, I'm on a no carb, like no refined carb, no refined sugar, like no dairy, no meat diet, just whole foods. I drink nothing but mineral water. You know, I minimize all my coffee intake, everything. Like I'm doing everything.
You're doing yoga every single day.
Yeah, well, I took a break now at the moment. I will get back to it. I'm doing yoga. I meditate. I do energy healing. I do Reiki. I do sleep hypnosis. I am doing everything, including all the alternative options. And I think I'm in with a chance, you know? If you tell yourself you're going to lose, you are. If you tell yourself you're going to win, you might, you know? And I think that's where I'm at, you know? Like, I just watched my dad beat it, like, you know? And he just had the same mental attitude that I did.
It's incredible. Jade, I'm going to have to let you go, but I think I could like sit here and talk to you all day. I find you so inspiring. I think what you're doing on your Instagram account is incredible. I would imagine that everybody who listens to this already does, but if you don't, go and follow Jayda McCann's story, because it's incredible. And when can we see the documentary? Is coming out like soonish?
Yes, documentary is due to come out maybe April, mid-April. And the album, we're looking maybe toward the end of the year.
I touched on the album and then we went back. So you're a singer as well?
Yes.
Okay, and it's R&B?
R&B at the moment, yeah, because I would have always kind of played more acoustic stuff and piano, but I'm really inspired by Alicia Keys. That's why I started to learn piano when I was a kid. And this album is something that I really want to resonate with the music that I listen to. And I want to turn my negative experiences and lyrics into positive, upbeat, kind of Afrobeat R&B songs that people can relate to, but also tap their feet to. And I think I want to put all my heart and soul into this.
Amazing. And when did you say that was coming out then?
I think we're looking more toward the end of the year, because it's a really ongoing process, creative process.
Incredible. Well, Jade, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.